Oh boy, have we got a juicy topic today, which is follow the niggle, following that little inner voice that asks us to do things that we really don't want to do because we're terrified of the result. But this is one of my favorite things to talk about, and also going to share some like pretty vulnerable stuff with you guys today, which I don't speak about very often, but I feel the niggle, feel the pull to share this with you. So I'm really excited to dive into this week's episode. But before we do, just wanted to do a shout out for one of my beautiful reviewers on iTunes from Helen, who is an amazing author and also has her own podcast, FYI, called Unleashing Your Creative Magic. She's an incredible author. And anyway, I'm just so grateful for her to review. And if you want to write a fucking book, then this is a podcast to listen to. She's amazing. Anyway, Helen says, if you want straight talking inspiration to start chasing your goals and turning them into reality, then this is the podcast for you. Gabby is amazing. I love listening to her podcasts. They are full of fabulous tips and she knows her stuff. I'd give 10 stars if I could. It really is that fab. Thank you so much, Helen. Love you. Appreciate this beautiful review. And guys, I would love to shout you out in the podcast. So if you love the podcast and you want to help spread the word far and wide, just pop over on iTunes and leave a little review. But let's dive into this week's topic, which is following the little pull, following the niggle. So if you haven't already, a great episode to listen before you listen to this one is What the Fuck is Intuition and How Do I Use It, which is episode 11. And this is going to help you kind of understand some of the things that we're going to talk about today because it's predominantly around intuition and that inner gut feeling. So if you don't know what your intuition is or how to access it or what it kind of feels like, I will briefly kind of talk about it today, but if you want a more in-depth podcast on that, it's only 15 minutes, episode 11, pause this, go listen and come back. So when we get an intuitive pull or an inner, like, you know, you get a niggle or a gut feeling to do something, sometimes it can feel like a really, really massive thing, but often it is actually a really subtle thing and it kind of gnaws away at us over time. So an inner pull could feel like, I think I want to quit this job, or I think I want to leave this relationship. Maybe I just want to sell all my shit and move overseas. Maybe I want to tell this person I don't want to be friends with them anymore. It could be anything, right? It could be a huge variety of these things. And more often than not, you'll hear it and you'll think, oh God, no, that's not right. That's not what I should do. I shouldn't be doing that. That's definitely not the route for me. And then it'll kind of disappear for a little while and then it'll pop up again. And then it'll start gnawing at your brain when you're trying to sleep. And then it's going to just fucking completely overtake your brain until sometimes what can happen is if you ignore it for long enough, the universe will kind of take it into its own hands and make shit happen. So maybe you really wanted to leave a job and you're like, I really want to go follow my passion, or I want to apply for a new job in an industry that really lights me up. And you ignore that niggle for years and years and years. And eventually the universe gets so sick of your shit and ends up making you redundant, right? Or the company goes under or something fucking crazy happens. I wonder if this has happened to you before. I've definitely noticed that when I don't follow the niggle, that usually something kind of like does it for me, and it's usually a lot more chaotic than if you had just listened to it and followed through on your own and just fucking went for it. So I've had a few of these happen over the course of my life, and one of the first ones was wanting to leave my full-time job and take photography seriously and really give it some effort. And that was a niggle for probably about 6 months until I decided to quit and go full-time in photography. Again, there's a whole episode on that. But something that was starting to happen was my body was starting to show signs of resistance. So I started to get, I had permanent nausea for 6 months, like non-stop nausea for 6 months. My skin started to break out in psoriasis, like all kinds of crazy shit was happening because I wasn't following and leaning into the desire to leave the job. And when I finally did, my nausea literally eased up like within the week of me finishing up at that job, which is absolutely fucking crazy. Our bodies are amazing. And send us messages all of the time. But one of the biggest kind of niggles that I had, and again, I don't talk about this a lot, but I feel like it needs to be shared, was I had a long-term partner of 6 years and we were very happy together and, you know, had a great life and whatnot. But I just had this niggle that I really wanted to move overseas. And it kind of showed up to me, wanted to move overseas, but he didn't want to go, which is also totally fine, you know, because we've all got our desires and what we want to do in life. And who am I to tell someone that they can't do what they want to do? But I just had this kind of pull that I really wanted to live overseas for indefinitely, if not a year just to start with, but indefinitely. And he didn't want to go. So I kept pushing that niggle down, just pushing it, burying it down, thinking, you know, maybe it's not that big of a deal. Maybe I don't need to do that. Maybe it's not, you know, it doesn't matter. It's not a big deal. I love my relationship. I'm really happy in it. Life in Australia is great. I don't want to rock the boat if I don't have to. But for the next 3 years, that little niggle kept popping up. I kept thinking, what if? And it really started to bother me because I'm like, fuck off, like fuck off thought. Everything in life is fine. Like, why do I need to do differently? Why do I need to I've left the job. I've already done the hard thing in my life. Why do I need to do something else? Why do I need to literally rock the boat? I feel like that's the theme of my life, just rock the boat. But this niggle kept popping up, and eventually it was just getting too hard to ignore. So a couple of years ago, I came overseas to my best friend's wedding, and while I was away, I just had this huge epiphany that my relationship was no longer serving me, and it was nothing to do with him. There was nothing wrong with the relationship. I would say it was like 99% great, but 1% of that was so fucking strong, wanting to move overseas, that it outweighed the 99%. It outweighed how great the relationship was. And I really just got to this pinpoint in my life where it was such a thin line between either following my desire to move overseas or staying in Australia and just repressing this thought for the rest of my life. That's how close it felt. And it was such a point of contention in our relationship as well. I was always fighting about wanting to move overseas and me really wanting to go and him not. And I was just sick of the fight, as well. So I ended up pushing it down and going, my needs aren't as important. I'm not as, I guess I'm not as important. So I just want to focus on making sure that the relationship is good and that he's happy. And having this distance when I went overseas, and you guys have probably had this before, when you go on holidays, you have epiphanies, you have massive realizations because you're outside of your normal kind of like 9 to 5. And it really just hit me like a ton of bricks of like, fuck, I have to end my relationship. And it sucked. It was really shit. It was not a fucking vibe, guys. I'm not going to lie to you. It was one of the hardest decisions I ever had to make. And I hated doing it. Nobody wants to break somebody's heart. Nobody wants to end a relationship. And I, have been connected with these guys for 6 years. I loved spending time with their family. I'd spent 6 years of my life, Christmases, birthdays, celebrations, massive life changes. And it was such a huge decision that I never took lightly. But I had this pull for 3 years, and it really just was eating away at me. And I almost felt like when I ended up breaking up with him, like I was on autopilot because it was so hard for me to make this decision. I don't like hurting anyone, I'm a people pleaser, fucking true, but I don't like to cause anybody pain. And I've had my heart broken before. We all have, and it fucking sucks. So being the one to do it was a really shit feeling. But I just knew that like life is so fucking short. It really is. And the last thing I wanted to do was hit 80 years old and look back and go, I wish that I had followed the niggle. I wish I had followed my dream to live overseas. And I was surrounded by friends who were doing it and they were going overseas, and I was so jealous and so envious of them. And I felt guilty for wanting more. I felt guilty because I had a great relationship. I had a great job. My life in Australia was beautiful. Like, why do I need to fucking rock the boat? But it just literally kept showing up for me, and I just had to do it. So yeah, I went into like autopilot mode and separated and broke the relationship up. And as I said, it was one of the hardest things I had done, but it was one of the most important catalysts in my life to lead me to where I am today. Now, it was not all roses and fucking like, oh, everything fell into alignment as soon as that happened. Things were hard for a while. I had a huge like falling out with my mum over it because she was devastated that it happened. Like we were, our families were quite connected. And mum and I have worked through all that stuff before, we've worked through that together now, but there was a lot of resistance, a lot of heartache, a lot of pain that came with this. And it wasn't like this immediate relief. Like I literally felt shit for them, for so fucking long over this decision, going, did I make the right choice? Have I just rocked the boat for no fucking good reason? But flash forward now, where I'm living in my soul home with my partner who I absolutely fucking adore, and we have this incredible life together. We're both creative. We both love to travel. We both want to live everywhere across the world. I look at my past relationship now and go, it was never going to suit the long term, and I was never going to suit him long term either. It was this constant fight of me being like, I want to move overseas, and he didn't. Unfair on him to put him through that turmoil when it was so out of alignment for him. And I really actually I really value that he was so stubborn in his dream, because it gave me the strength to be stubborn in mine as well. So he really stuck to his guns and I really stuck to mine, and that was the best thing for the both of us in the long run. And so, as I said, like, it wasn't this immediate realization of like, oh yes, like a huge weight has been lifted and my life is perfect now. Like, it took another year for everything to kind of start to make sense to me. And because of that relationship ending, I ended up traveling to Scotland, which I had no desire to do beforehand, and fell in love with the country and thought, this is fucking amazing, and ended up moving here, and then met my current partner, Billy. And you know, and even meeting him, like, it was just such a wild thing too, because he's really creative, I'm really creative, and he's just not the person that I thought that I would manifest into my life, but here he is. And we have this beautiful life together in Scotland, and I just think, how much would I have missed out on if I didn't follow the niggle? Look at the life that I would have missed out on. And it's just like, I probably wouldn't be doing this podcast, let's be honest, guys. Like, my business would look different, my life would look different, I'd be geographically in a whole other fucking location. So I just really think that, you know, we can, when we have these niggles pop up and these gut feelings, they can be quite distressing, you know, whether it's to end a relationship, to start a relationship, to find a new job, to relocate. So many of these things, you know, will happen as you go through life. You're going to find these little niggles and these little gut feelings, and you've got to trust them, and trust in the discomfort, trust in the fact that you may not know exactly like what you're going to gain from it straight away. And I certainly didn't. As I said, it took a year to look back and go, wow, that was actually one of the best things that I could have done for myself. And just accept the fact that you're probably going to ruffle feathers. You're probably going to piss people off. People are probably going to leave your life, but they were just part of a chapter of the entire book of your life. And that's okay too. You know, they're allowed to just be a chapter, because at the end of the day, the only person you have to answer to is you. Like, at the end of your life, you're the only person stuck with you, right? So you really need to do what's right for you and follow those pulls and just trust into them. But as you guys know, I'm like super authentic in the sense that I don't want to gloss it over and be like, it was the best thing I ever did and I felt amazing straight away. Like, yes, now looking at it, it's the best thing I ever did, but at the time it felt fucking shit. When I left the full-time job, I didn't have work for, you know, a couple of months. It felt fucking shit. There's so many things. Like, when I decided to officially like move to Scotland and leave my life in Sydney, that felt fucking shit. But on the other side of it, it outweighs all of that shitness, you know, all the magic and all the amazing things that have come from leaving a job, of leaving a relationship and leaving my home country outweigh that discomfort, right? All the magic that I have now outweighs that discomfort and all the shit that I went through. So if you have a little gut feeling, a little niggle, a little voice that's saying, I think this is the right decision, you need to trust into that. You need to lean into it and just take the fucking leap. It doesn't really get easier. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, we've had a bit of a gut feeling, a pull to move to the Highlands, and it scares the shit out of me because it's not in a city, and I've always lived in, you know, a city or around somewhere where I have lots of access to the things I need. But I've had this pull for us to move. Both of us have had the pull to move and go a little bit more rural, you know, 3 weeks out of 4 every month. And it scares the shit out of me because I'm like, oh God, what does that mean for my business? What does it mean for my friendship groups and all this kind of stuff? But I know better than to sit on a gut feeling for too long. And if I just take the leap, if I just follow the niggle and just trust in that path, knowing that it's for my highest good. And it may not show the highest good straight away. Often it doesn't show the highest good straight away. You still have lessons to learn, and you still got to fucking like trail through this, and it can be really tumultuous and really frustrating. But your intuition's never going to lead you astray. Its purpose is to keep you on your path to the best possible fucking life for you. So you really need to lean into it. Again, like, if you're not quite sure what intuition is, go back and listen to episode 11, because that's really going to clarify this more for you. But your intuition and your gut feeling is just that little voice, that little whisper that tells you that maybe there's something different, that maybe there's something better for you. And if I can, you know, hopefully by listening to this 15-minute podcast, you've now kind of learned that when you lean into it and trust into it, that really great things can come from it. So if you are having that feeling or that pull, I really encourage you to explore it, to give it a crack, take the leap, take the risk, because as I said, at the end of the day, the only person you have to answer to is yourself. So you better make yourself happy, right? Now, this doesn't mean going and ruining other people's lives. That's not what I'm telling you to fucking do. But if you have had a pull to make some changes, then you do need to follow it and honor it, because often the universe will kind of like fuck your shit up if you don't. But it's always for the greater good. It's always for the highest good. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode, guys. Thanks for holding space for me and listening while I shared, that quite vulnerable section of my life with you. But I have found that when I do share that story every now and then, that the right people need to hear it. So if you're in a relationship that is no longer serving you and you are scared to take the leap because it's 99% good, but that 1% is outweighing the rest of it, coming from somebody who has experienced it like a fucking, oh my gosh, it just like hit me like a ton of bricks. I can tell you that it was one of the best things that I ever did for myself, and I think for him too, because he's in a new relationship and he looks really fucking happy from what I can see from that. So sometimes we have to make the hard decision, and yeah, we just have to make the hard decision, and it fucking sucks. But if you are sitting there with that feeling and that pull, then maybe this is your sign to make a choice in your relationship, or at least have a really frank conversation with your partner about your desires and your goals and why they're so fucking important to you. A little signpost, if you will. Thank you so much for listening, guys. If this message did resonate, I would love for you to share it on your stories, or leave me a little review over on iTunes, or just shoot me a message on Instagram and let me know that it sat well with you, what you took away from it, because I do always love hearing from you guys. So thank you so much for listening, and can't wait to speak to you next time.